Annual doctor visits can play a critical role in detecting cancer early before physical signs or symptoms appear. However, a new survey reveals that while most women engaged in normal activities once local pandemic restrictions were lifted, less than half visited their doctor's offices. Everyone's favorite OBGYN, Dr. Angela Jones, is here to encourage women to get appointments for their annual exams and cancer screenings back on the books. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning. How are you?
We're doing well, and this is a really important topic that we're talking about. I want to know more about this decline in women that have been coming in for their annual exams, especially during the past year and a half. Is that still happening now?
Absolutely. You just alluded to a really interesting stat from that survey. Less than 50% of women have returned to their OBGYN visits or their primary care physician visits, in spite of the fact that a lot of the restrictions from COVID have been lifted. Another interesting stat from that same survey is that almost a quarter, i.e. 24% of women between the ages of 40 and 60, admit to not having seen their OBGYN or primary care physician in like 36 months. And that's aside from the pandemic. So we need to do better because these screenings are important. They save lives. Screening saves lives.
Yeah, these statistics are very telling. Is there anything else in this study or in this survey that you find particularly alarming, especially as a medical expert OBGYN?
The stat that I previously mentioned, I found the most alarming, but the other thing that really raised my eyebrows is the fact that 61% of the women surveyed said that they do not routinely, make sure that their moms, sisters, girlfriends, or people that they love are getting these routine screenings. I think that it's really important to be our sisters' keepers and make sure that not only are we making ourselves priorities, but that we also make sure that those women in our lives that are important to us are also making themselves a priority as well.
A lot of these exams are referred to as an annual exam, but from what you're saying, a lot of women have gone past that annual mark and haven't gone back. Let's talk about how often do you recommend that women be screened for cancers like cervical cancer or even breast cancer?
That's a great question. Screening guidelines and types of tests that should be done is really going to be dependent on your age. We'll start with mammograms, which is what we use to screen for breast cancer. Mammography should begin at the age of 40, and these are ACOG's guidelines, the American College of OBGYN. ACOG recommends that annual screening mammography begin at the age of 40. Now, certainly, if you have a history of a first-degree relative, i.e. mom, dad, sibling that has a history of breast cancer, your screening will begin 10 years prior to the age of the affected relative. With regards to cervical cancer screening, which is typically done either via pap smear or HPV testing, and sometimes both, screening for pap smears in cervical cancer begins at the age of 21. And then again, depending on your age and the type of testing that you have done, that will dictate whether future screenings are done in 3-year increments versus 5-year increments. A really great source to help you to keep these screening guidelines and recommendations straight can be found at preventcancer.org/back on the books. It's a great resource, and I highly recommend that you visit that site to make sure that you're current, up to date, and getting your screening back on the books.
Dr. Jones, I'm sure you regularly meet all kinds of women with all kinds of concerns, but I think one fear that's out there is getting that mammogram or having, these exams where it's, more of our private areas of our body. What do you say to help them alleviate some of that discomfort or awkwardness?
I think that first and foremost, it starts with making sure that you have a provider that you trust and that takes excellent care of you. And when I say excellent care, I mean you want to see a provider that empowers you through providing you with accurate information, making sure that they run through the components of an annual exam and the steps that will be involved, what the exam encompasses, the rationale behind providing and recommending certain screenings. Knowledge is always very empowering, and I find that when women not only trust their doctors, they will be more disclosing but also knowing the components and the whys of the exam really helps to alleviate a lot of these fears and feelings of awkwardness that can sometimes surround these screenings.
Dr. Jones, great information and a great reminder for women to get those appointments in and get your screenings done. For more on this, you can visit preventcancer.org/backonthebooks.